It was only a matter of time before Meghan Markle ended up in the satirical crosshairs of The Simpsons, but no one expected a Rose to be this savage or this accurate.
And by the power vested in me by you just now, I pronounce you king and trophy queen. In the name of the Henry, the Hank, and the Holy Harry, amen.
Oh!
One Sunday night, a cartoon character bearing an unmistakable resemblance to Meghan strutted onto America's most iconic animated stage, not with royal grace, but with vegan cupcakes, a fake smile podcast, and enough self-promotion to make even Hollywood blood. By Monday morning, the internet was ablaze. Memes, reaction videos, think pieces, it was everywhere. But while the world laughed, Meghan wasn't even close to amused. This wasn't just a throwaway jab, it was a cultural moment of reflection of how far her public image has fallen, because for all the PR, gloss, podcast sound bites, and Netflix rollouts, Meghan's media empire has one fatal flaw. It's built entirely around herself, and people are tired. The animated parody nailed that problem. The character's cooking show, bland, polished, preachy, was a clear nod to Meghan's now scrapped Netflix series with Love Meghan. That show was supposed to be a triumphant comeback, blending California wellness with a royal glow. What it turned into was a stiff, soulless blend of social justice messaging and aesthetic perfection that insiders had felt more like a TED Talk than Comfort TV. Netflix pulled the plug before a single episode aired, and that was just one of many projects to quietly fall apart. Instead of shifting gears, Meghan doubled down. She launched a podcast called Confessions of a Female Founder, which from the title alone already sounded like a PowerPoint in audio form. Leaked clips showed a recurring theme: guests who barely got to speak because the spotlight always swerved back to Meghan's own journey, her struggles, her wins, her truth. Critics didn't mince words. One producer reportedly said it felt like a motivational LinkedIn post that never ends. Another called it a mirror disguised as a microphone. But here's the thing, this pattern isn't new. Remember Archetypes, the podcast Meghan launched with Spotify, a $20 million 0 cents deal, hyped as a platform to break down female stereotypes. But the moment it hit airwaves, something felt off. It was overproduced, carefully choreographed, and lacked anything resembling authentic conversation. Spotify execs grew increasingly frustrated. After only 12 episodes, a deal quietly dissolved. Meghan walked away once again, citing creative differences. Translation: they wanted content, she wanted control. Back to The Simpsons, what made this satire cut so deep wasn't that it was exaggerated, it was that it wasn't. They didn't lampoon some fictional version of Meghan, they held up a mirror, and when you're more concerned with brand building than storytelling, satire becomes reality in disguise. Sources close to Meghan said she was furious behind closed doors. She reportedly called the episode sexist and disrespectful. Her team even made quiet complaints, arguing the show was targeting a woman of color trying to uplift others. But critics, including several prominent feminists, weren't buying it. Feminism isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card for bad content. One columnist wrote bluntly that backlash mark a shift. Meghan had long used empowerment rhetoric as both shield and sword, highlighting systemic inequality while positioning herself as a brave truth-teller. But when every project ends up centering her own brand, her own pain, her own greatness, the message gets muddy, and eventually people stop listening. What's worse is that even her allies in Hollywood are going quiet. Executives who once scrambled to sign her are now dodging calls. One Netflix producer allegedly told a reporter she's uncoachable, it's her way or no way, and when it flops, she plays a victim. Another insider said working with Meghan felt like walking through a PR minefield. A casual suggestion could be twisted into a microaggression. It's not just the public who's losing patience, it's the people who write the checks. And then there's the audience. Meghan had a rare opportunity, global attention, royal recognition, and a massive platform to do something meaningful. Instead, she built a media empire out of self-referential fluff, whether it was a documentary, a podcast, or a cooking show. The structure never changed. Meghan front and center with a cast of supporting characters there to validate her narrative. There was no growth, no conflict, no arc, just endless branding exercises wrapped in empowerment slogans. That's why The Simpsons roast landed like a punch to the gut, because it wasn't satire. It was a reality check, animated and sugar-coated, sure, but devastatingly true. And maybe that's the point where this whole thing started to collapse, when even the jokes feel more honest than the Content itself, the curtain starts to fall. The Duchess of Sussex, once seen as a bold voice of change, is now better known as the Duchess of Deflection. The image is cracking, and no amount of Instagram quotes or curated podcast episodes can glue it back together. But it gets worse, because this isn't just about Meghan's failed shows. It's about what those failures represent: a disconnect between the image she projects and the reality people see, between what she promises and what she delivers longer. This gap grows the harder it becomes to take her seriously. So while Meghan fumes and spins and rebrands, the public's already moved on. They're laughing, yes, but not with her. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all, because once the audience stops buying what you're selling, it's not just a failed project, it's a failed persona. Somewhere inside Meghan's multi-million-dollar Montecito mansion, her inner circle is still trying to figure out what went wrong. The money was there, the platform was global, the curiosity was endless, and yet every project, every headline, every attempt to reinvent her image has backfired. The numbers don't lie. In the UK, her approval rating sits in the basement. In the US, even the liberal media that once championed her cause is pulling back. One entertainment editor put it bluntly: she's overexposed and under-delivering. But what really stings is that the fall wasn't caused by a scandal. It wasn't one moment. It was a slow, steady realization that Meghan Markle just isn't who she markets herself to be. For years, she painted herself as a disruptor, modern royal, a voice for the unheard. But somewhere along the way, the message got hijacked by the Mirror. It stopped being about change and started being about her. Take the Oprah interview. It was supposed to be a turning point, and in a way it was. It catapulted Meghan and Harry into global celebrity status outside the palace walls. But over time, people began picking it apart. Key claims were challenged, timelines didn't add up. And the more Meghan doubled down on her truth, the more the facts seemed to drift. That's the problem with playing the victim on repeat. It loses power fast. The public doesn't mind a comeback story. They just want to see the struggle turn into something real, something relatable. Meghan's mistake was freezing her story in place, always wounded, always misunderstood, always bravely pushing forward, yet never actually changing. Meanwhile, the Hollywood machine started to lose patience. Executives behind the scenes whispered what viewers were already thinking: there's no substance. One studio insider said her pitches all sound the same: buzzword, brand-friendly visuals, and vague empowerment messaging with no actual depth. Another exec reportedly passed on a project, saying it's like she wants to be Oprah but skipped the part where she earns trust. And that's a core issue. Trust people don't feel like Meghan sharing anything authentic. It's all too polished, too perfect, too carefully managed. Even when she's talking about pain or mental health or injustice, it feels less like confession and more like a strategy. Her words don't invite empathy. They demand applause while regular people are struggling with inflation, layoffs, and rent hikes. Meghan's out here slicing cucumbers in a designer kitchen while monologuing about her hardships. One viral tweet summed it up: she's out here cosplaying as a press while wearing a $3,000 Sense blouse. And whether fair or not, that's a perception now out of touch and completely unaware. Even the project she puts out seemed designed to avoid any kind of real vulnerability. Pearl, her animated Netflix show, was pitched as an empowering story of a young girl inspired by influential women in history. Sounds good on paper, but when internal memos leaked, it was clear the series lacked any real structure or creative focus. Netflix axed it during budget cuts, and no one really blinked. The same fate hit her podcast archetypes. At first, the title teased something bold, challenging, labeled breaking down stereotypes. But what listeners got instead was a series of overly scripted episodes where Meghan spent more time reflecting on her own experiences than drawing out the stories of her guests. One audio engineer who worked on the series said off the record, "It felt like a therapy session that accidentally got uploaded." Even her defenders are growing quiet. The media outlets that once celebrated every project are covering her with increasing skepticism. Headlines have shifted from groundbreaking Duchess speaks out to Meghan's latest flop raises eyebrows. It's no longer brave to praise her, it's risky. And perhaps most telling of all is a change in public tone. Early on, critiques of Meghan were often met with backlash, accusations of racism, sexism, or bias. But now, more people feel comfortable speaking out. Former fans have taken to Reddit, YouTube, even TikTok to explain why they checked out. The common thread: exhaustion. They are tired of being asked to clap for something that doesn't resonate, tired of being tripped into praising a person who won't stop talking about how silent she is, tired of seeing every media appearance turned into a branding opportunity. The magic is gone, and in its place is something that feels hollow. Even within the Sussex household, insiders say tension is mounting. Harry, who once followed Meghan's media strategy without question, is reportedly growing frustrated, according to one source, is concerned that the constant need for relevance is alienating the very audience they were trying to connect with. One former staffer said he wanted purpose, she wanted PR, and as new royals rise in popularity, Kate, William, even the children, Meghan's absence from the palace doesn't feel rebellious anymore, it feels irrelevant. The monarchy has moved on, so has the public, the only one still stuck trying to relaunch is Meghan. The irony, the more she talks, the less people listen, and in an industry built on attention, that's the death nail. Hollywood doesn't forget a bad pitch. It might forgive, it might recycle, but it never forgets, and Meghan Markle, for all her star power and curated elegance, has become a cautionary tale whispered behind studio doors, not because she's controversial, but because she's become predictable, and in the entertainment industry, predictability has poisoned the cause, have slowed the meetings. Aren't happening. Producers who once cleared calendars for her are now politely declining. One executive reportedly told a colleague, every idea ends with Meghan on a pedestal. And that's the issue in an industry built on stories. She keeps handing them a brochure. Insiders say streaming platforms are quietly shifting focus away from the Sussexes altogether. Their content isn't delivering the numbers it once did. People click out of curiosity, but they rarely finish. There's no emotional payoff, no surprise, just more of the same glossy narratives, softly lit interviews, and a relentless focus on Meghan's internal world. It's not entertainment, it's a feedback loop. That loop isn't just hurting her career, is changing the way people see her entirely. A recent poll by YouGov showed her favorability dropping below 25% in the UK. In the US, it's slipping too, especially among moderate audiences who once saw her as a fresh face in the royal machine. The enthusiasm is gone. What's left is fatigue. The numbers reflect a deeper truth. The public doesn't hate Meghan, they just don't buy the act anymore. She's not polarizing, she's unconvincing. Her stories feel manufactured, her emotions rehearse, her brand stretched too thin across too many platforms. Every new venture feels like another attempt to make herself the center of the conversation, and audiences, they tune out. One marketing expert broke it down like this: if your entire identity is built on being misunderstood, you need people to keep misunderstanding you. But eventually people stop caring enough to argue. That's where Meghan is now, not in a firestorm, but in a silence that's louder than backlash. It's indifference, and that's fatal for someone banking on attention. Even her signature themes, empowerment, feminism, racial justice, feel less like calls to action and more like brand pillars. Critics have pointed out that her messaging often lacks specificity or accountability. It's not about systemic change, it's about image management, aesthetic activism, as one op-ed described it. And in 2025, when audiences are more socially conscious than ever, performative messages ring hollow. The press has picked up on this thing. Pieces and satire aside, even straight news coverage has shifted tone. Outlets now lead with her failed ventures, not her achievements. Articles question her credibility, not celebrate her courage. Late night hosts, once afraid to mock her, now drop punchlines with ease. Of fear of backlash has faded, and that means the scrutiny is only getting sharper. All of this has led to a quiet rebranding effort behind the scenes. Her team has reportedly discussed pivoting away from the Meghan content model. There's talk of documentaries that focus on other people's stories, collaborations where Meghan steps out of the spotlight, even whispers of a return to acting. But the problem remains: is the audience willing to follow her into something new? Trust once lost is hard to regain, and Meghan didn't just lose the public's trust, she overplayed it. The Oprah interview, the docu-series, the Spotify fallout, the Netflix cancellations, each one added to the narrative that she's more focused on being right than being real. And that's a tough sell when your business is relatability. Meanwhile, other public figures with similar platforms are doing what Meghan couldn't. Evolving. Serena Williams, for example, transitioned into business and motherhood with grace. Michelle Obama launched podcasts and books that felt intimate, not branded. Even Harry, in his limited solo appearances, has started to connect in a way Meghan no longer does. A difference, vulnerability without the varnish. There's still a path for Meghan to recover, but it would requires something she hasn't shown much of: genuine humility, a willingness to listen instead of speak, to produce instead of perform, to let the story breathe instead of choking it with narrative control. That means letting go of the need to be understood and embracing the messiness of just being. But whether she's capable of that pivot is the real question. Those closest to her say she believes deeply in her vision. That's not the issue. The issue is that she's built a brand where disagreement equals disrespect, and that rigidity is killing her career. At some point, the curtain falls, not with a crash, but with an echo. The audience stops clapping, the cameras stop rolling, And all that's left is a question: what now? For Meghan Markle, the answer will depend on whether she can do the one thing she's avoided since leaving the palace: let go of the spotlight, and prove she can thrive without it, because the truth is people don't need another podcast or documentary. They need a reason to care, and right now that reason is slipping further away with every silent reaction, every failed rollout, and every cartoon.